Bergen-Belsen, for me, was a place of death. Absolutely tragic.
When British Army liberators arrived at Bergen-Belsen, 15-year-old Susan Pollack was so weak she had lost the ability to walk.
I feel a pair of gentle hands picking me up. And who was that? The British Army.
Over 1,000 people from across the world gathered at Bergen-Belsen Memorial, commemorating the liberation of the camp by British forces in April 1945. The different nationalities of the prisoners were reflected in the service, which was translated into over 8 languages.
It was really emotional, stood here as, a Jewish member of the armed forces and also someone whose grandfather was part of the Royal Artillery Regiment, feel that connection to my Jewish heritage, but as well as my grandfather that was here liberating the camp.
My family are Russian Jews, Ukrainian Jews, came to England shortly before the war, shortly after the First World War, I suppose. And being Jewish is part of me, like everyone's religion is part of them, and has been pretty much independent of being in the army. So when it comes together on something like today, coming to Bergen-Belsen on the 80th anniversary, it is very moving, both as a soldier and as a Jew.
Over 70,000 people died at Bergen-Belsen between 1941 and 1945. It started as a prisoner of war camp, but later became a concentration camp. This was the main entrance to Bergen-Belsen camp, where British forces arrived 80 years ago to liberate tens of thousands of prisoners. The scene they turned up to was an orderly row of huts that was SS accommodation. What they later uncovered is now known as one of the most harrowing chapters of World War II. There are few visible traces of what happened at Bergen-Belsen. The mass graves of thousands serve as a permanent reminder.
You can't help but be moved by the survivors of the camp. The British military arrived and they saw hope for the first time for many years. They saw the possibility of escaping from the horror in which they were living.
Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner referenced the scenes of death, disease and suffering the troops came across, quoting a British Army officer, Major Leonard Burney.
He was one of the very first people into this camp, and he just assumed it was a prisoner of war camp. And he saw these thousands of dead bodies and more dead bodies and a big pit filled with more bodies, and he was so horrified and traumatised.
Survivors and their families make the journey so the world doesn't forget. Despite the sadness, there's also a sense of hope. Sophie Kakianis, BFBS Forces News, Bergen-Belsen.